Welcome to the sanctuary for the anxiously attached. I am your host and your friend, Ava, and I am so happy you are here. Before we start, this podcast is sponsored by Healing Anxious Attachment, the workbook, available through the link in the bio. Let's begin. How do you know if you have anxious attachment? Anxious attachment can be overwhelming and distressing. Individuals with an anxious attachment style often experience intense feelings of fear, insecurity, and uncertainty in their relationships. They may worry that their partner will abandon them or that they are not good enough to be loved, and may constantly seek reassurance and validation from their partner. Anxious attachment is a complex pattern of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that can be challenging to recognize in oneself. However, there are several signs and symptoms that may indicate an anxious attachment style. Here are some common signs that you may have an anxious attachment style. You worry a lot about your relationships. If you find yourself constantly worrying about whether your partner loves you or whether they will leave you, it may be a sign of anxious attachment. You may feel like you need constant reassurance and validation from your partner to feel secure in the relationship. You may feel hypersensitive to any changes in their relationship and may interpret even minor events as signs of rejection or abandonment. For example, a missed call or a delayed response to a text message may trigger feelings of panic and anxiety. You feel a strong need for closeness and intimacy. People with anxious attachment often crave emotional closeness and intimacy in their relationships. They may feel anxious or uncomfortable when their partner is not physically or emotionally available to them. You are easily triggered by relationship stressors. Even minor relationship stressors, such as a disagreement or a missed call, can trigger feelings of panic and anxiety in people with anxious attachment. They may interpret these stressors as signs of rejection or abandonment. You struggle with trust. People with anxious attachment may have difficulty trusting their partner or others in their life. They may worry that others will betray them or that they are not trustworthy themselves. You have a history of unhealthy relationships. If you have a history of relationships that were characterized by infidelity, emotional distance, or other negative dynamics, it may be a sign of an anxious attachment style. Anxious attachment can also manifest in physical symptoms such as increased heart rate, sweating, and difficulty breathing. These symptoms may be triggered by thoughts or feelings related to the relationship and can be difficult to manage. While the signs and symptoms of anxious attachment can vary from person to person, there are also some less common symptoms that may be indicative of this attachment style. Here are some examples of uncommon symptoms of anxious attachment. Emotional volatility. People with anxious attachment may experience intense emotions such as anger, frustration, or sadness that are difficult to control. They may feel overwhelmed by these emotions and struggle to regulate them. Need for control. People with anxious attachment may feel a strong need to control their partner or their environment in order to feel secure. They may try to control their partner's behavior or engage in obsessive behaviors, such as constantly checking their partner's phone or social media accounts. Insecurity in non-romantic relationships. While anxious attachment is often associated with romantic relationships, people with this attachment style may also struggle with insecurity and anxiety in other relationships, such as friendships or family relationships. Difficulty setting boundaries. People with anxious attachment may have difficulty setting and maintaining healthy boundaries in their relationships. They may struggle to assert their needs or may feel uncomfortable when their partner sets boundaries. Self-criticism. Anxious attachment can be associated with high levels of self-criticism and self-doubt. People with this attachment style may be very hard on themselves and may struggle to see their own strengths and positive qualities. Here are 10 questions to ask yourself to figure out if you may have anxious attachment style. 1. Do you often worry about being abandoned or rejected by your romantic partners or close friends? 2. Do you have a strong desire for constant reassurance and validation from others? 3. Are you overly sensitive to perceived signs of disinterest or distance from your partner? 4. Do you tend to overanalyze and overthink your relationships, often creating scenarios or jumping to conclusions? 5. Do you find it challenging to trust others and struggle with fears of betrayal or being taken advantage of? 6. Are you prone to experiencing jealousy or possessiveness in your relationships? 7. Do you have a tendency to become overly dependent on your partner for emotional support and validation? 8. Are you easily overwhelmed by relationship conflicts or disagreements, and do they affect your sense of self-worth? 9. Do you find it difficult to set boundaries and express your needs and desires in relationships? 10. Do you have a pattern of getting into relationships with partners who are emotionally unavailable or inconsistent in their affection? Reflecting on these questions can provide insights into your attachment style, but it's important to note that a professional therapist or counselor can offer a more accurate assessment and guidance based on your specific circumstances. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you would like to keep getting tips on how to deal with anxious attachment and keep updated on other relatable content. Thank you and lots of love.